Hi, boys and girls, moms and dads, grandparents, anybody else that's watching today. I'm meteorologist Steve Caparotta from WAFB, and really happy and excited to be a part of the BR Summer Experience. Today, what I'm going to teach you guys about is tracking hurricanes. Now, the old school way that people like me did it when we were growing up, maybe some of the moms and dads watching, we had these paper tracking maps kind of like this one. And I'm going to show you where you can get one. You should have got one in your packet, though, also. Speaking of which, get that ready, grab a pencil, because the second half of the lesson, we're going to do a real-life example. We're going to track the storm on a map. We're going to track Cristobal from earlier in the summer. The first part, I'm going to kind of teach you how it works and how to do it, and then the second one, we'll use that real-life example. So grab that tracking map, grab that pencil, and follow along with me as I teach you how to do it. So, when we talk about tracking hurricanes, the first thing I'm going to start out with here is just a map of the globe. Now, this is a flat map. We all know the Earth and the globe, it's round, right? Well, I've got a flat map to make this a little bit easier. But as we track hurricanes, there are two key things we need to know about. We need to know about latitude, and we need to know about longitude. And I'm going to explain each of those to you, and that'll help you track the storms as we go forward. So, as we look at maps, we have these lines that they're not actually down on the ground. If you walk outside, you're not going to see a line. But on maps, we put them on there. And the lines that run across a map, like these that you see right now, these are called lines of latitude. They extend east and west on a map. The most important line of latitude that divides the Earth in half, north of it, we call it the northern hemisphere up here where we live, and then south of it, we call it the southern hemisphere. So we divide the Earth in half at the equator. Now the equator, its coordinate is 0 degrees latitude, okay? Remember that. The equator is 0 degrees latitude. Now, as we go north of the equator, the way I have these lines drawn on, each one represents 10 degrees of latitude. So we go from 0 degrees at the equator to 10 degrees north, 20 degrees north, 30 degrees north, which runs right across South Louisiana, and so on. We go all the way up to 90 north. Not all of that's on the map. Then as we go south of the equator, the same story. Each line is 10 degrees. So 10 degrees south, 20 degrees south, 30 degrees south, and so on. So when we talk about latitude, latitude tells us how far north or south a point is relative to the equator. Okay, so latitude is one of the measurements that we use when tracking a hurricane. The other one that we use is called longitude. Our lines of longitude are up and down on the map, or north and south. Now, just like we had one really important line of latitude, there's one really important line of longitude. That's called the prime meridian. It runs here through Western Africa and right up through Greenwich, England, okay? Now that line of longitude is also 0 degrees. Remember, the equator is 0 degrees latitude. The prime meridian is 0 degrees longitude. Now, just like the equator divides the Earth in half, north and south, the prime meridian divides the Earth in half, east and west, okay? So that's what we use those lines for. So as we go west of the prime meridian, again, each of these lines is 10 degrees. We go 10 degrees, 20 degrees west, 30 degrees west. And as we get all the way over into Louisiana, the one that passes through parts of southeast Louisiana and right on through New Orleans, in fact, is 90 degrees west, right about where I've got the little cursor on the screen right now. So anything left of the prime meridian, west of it, we measure in degrees west. Now as we go to the east of it, the eastern hemisphere, 10 degrees east, 20 degrees east, 30 degrees east, and so on. So again, each of those lines is 10 degrees. Now, another very important point for us is that point where the equator and the prime meridian, where they intersect. Now this is where we can start talking about coordinates. Coordinates are what we use to kind of pinpoint and identify where the center of a tropical storm or a hurricane is located. So the coordinates where the equator and where the prime meridian intersect are 0 degrees north, 0 degrees west. Okay? Now, as we track hurricanes in our part of the world, everything that we track is north of the equator and it is west of the prime meridian. So that means the tropical storms and hurricanes that we track, the ones that we worry about, potentially impacting the United States and us here in Louisiana, the coordinates are always going to be some degrees north and some degrees west. That's how they're presented. Latitude's always first, longitude second. Now, get that tracking map ready that you should have in your packet, and we're actually going to work you through how to actually track a storm. We're going to use Cristobal from earlier in the summer that moved into Louisiana. So this is what I've got on the screen is this map that I've also got printed out and that you guys should have handy. So we're going to run you through an example of how you can do this. So when the system first formed, now, I don't want to get too deep into the hurricane lesson. We can talk more about that another day. But there are different stages of development. Before we get to a hurricane, we have a tropical storm. And before we get to a tropical storm, we have a tropical depression. There are different stages of development. We first get that tropical depression. Once the winds reach 39 miles per hour or higher, that's when it becomes a tropical storm. That's when it gets a name. And then once those winds reach 74 miles per hour or higher, that's when it gets classified as a hurricane. So when Cristobal first started out as a tropical depression, it was on June 1st. It happened at 4 p.m. Here are the coordinates that were given to us by the National Hurricane Center. 19.6 degrees north, 91.2 degrees west. So how do we find that on the map? Well, that's what I'm here for, right? I'm going to teach you guys how to do it. So let's first worry about that first number, the latitude, 19.6 degrees north. Let's find that on our map. Now, our tracking map has some labels to help us out. So over here on the right side, notice I've got 20 degrees labeled, I've got 25, and I've got 30. Those are 20 degrees north, 25 degrees north, and 30 degrees north. But we've also got some lines in between. Each of those lines is 1 degree of latitude. So what do I mean by that? We go from 20 right here to 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, and so on. So let's find that 19.6 north. So here's what we're going to do. So first, I've highlighted the line that is 20 degrees of latitude. Now we know 19 is less than 20, right? So let's highlight the line that's 19. So now we know that 19.6 degrees north, it's going to be somewhere in between these two lines that I've highlighted. Now, let's look at the longitude, 91.2 degrees west. So I'm first going to highlight here the line that is 91 degrees west. So you notice how I did that? I've got 90 down here, 91. That's 91. And then the next one is 92. So we know 91.2, it's a little more than 91, but it's not as high as 92. So now we've got a box where all of these lines intersect. So now we know the point that we want to track is somewhere in that red square that I've highlighted. So how exactly do we plot it? Well, I'm going to put the point down here for you and kind of walk you through it. So again, remember this line is 19 degrees of latitude. This one is 20. So when we look at 19.6, 19.6 is a little more than halfway between 19 and 20. So that's where I put the point, a little more than halfway. We also need to figure out where 91.2 is. So here's 91, here's 92, 91.2. For kids that have learned fractions, the decimals here, that's 2/10, okay? So that 91.2, 0.2 is much closer to 91 than it is to 92. So that's the point that I've plotted. That may still be a little confusing. I would expect that to be, but I'm going to walk you through a few more of these points, and hopefully I'll start to make more sense. But where this makes the most sense, you guys, is when you actually practice it yourself. So Cristobal The winds reached 39 or 40 miles per hour on June 2nd at 1 o'clock. That's when it became a tropical storm. That's when it got a name. So that's the next point I decided we could plot. So the latitude here is 19.2 north, and the longitude is 92.8 west. So I'm going to walk you through that the same way. So we're going to highlight our lines of latitude. Here's 19, here's 20. So again, we know our point's going to fall somewhere in between those two lines. And then we're going to highlight our lines of longitude that we need to know. So it's 92.8. That means 92.8. It's somewhere between 92 and 93. So this line is 92. This one is 93. And again, I've highlighted a red square where we know our dot's going to go. And there's our point. So again, 19.2, that means when you're talking about 19.2, it's closer to 19 than it is to 20. So I'll put my dot down here closer to 19. 92.8, that 0.8 means it's closer to 93 than it is to 92. So we're actually closer to 93 down here. So we plotted 19.2, 92.8. Okay, we're going to plot two more. All right, so by June 6th, a few days later, it was moving northward through the Gulf of Mexico. Cristobal was. At this point, 1 o'clock on June 6th, the latitude was 24.7 north, and the longitude was 90.2 west. So let's highlight our lines again. We're going to start out with our latitude. So it's 24.7. That means it's somewhere between 24 and 25. So the lower red line is 24. You see how I've come to that? 25 is easy to find on this map. Here's 25. One less than 25 is 24. So we know our latitude, it's going to fall somewhere in between those two lines. Now as we look at our longitude, 90.2 west. Again, 90 is kind of easy to find on this map. I've got 90 labeled. So here's 90 running north and south. So one line over is 91. All right, so let's think about it. So if we break these coordinates down as we talk about the decimals, 0.1, 0.2, think about it for a second, boys and girls. For instance, we could have 24.0, we could have 24.1, 24.2, 24.3, 24.4, 24.5, 24.6, 24.7, 24.8, 24.9, and then we go to 25. So hopefully that'll start helping you figure out these, where we get into the decimals and the fractions, what all that means. So as you think about these decimals, understand that anything 0.5 is the midpoint, halfway there. So anything above 5 is going to be closer to the higher number. Anything below 5 is going to be closer to the lower number. All right, so now we've got our square where all four of our lines intersect. Here it is. I've highlighted the square. So 24.7. Remember, our 25 lines right here. So we know 24.7, that's going to be closer to 25 than it is to 24. A little more than halfway between the 2 points. So that's kind of how I've drawn the dot. 90.2, we know 0.2 means it's much closer to 90 right here than it is to 91 over here. And so that's how we ended up at that point. Then our final point that we're going to plot is right about as the storm was moving into Louisiana on June 7th. So at this point in time, the latitude was 29.1 north, the longitude 89.9 west. So let's draw our red lines one more time. So I've drawn in the line of latitude that's 29, the line that's 30. Again, 30 is easy to find right here. So we bring that over and notice 30 goes right through New Orleans. And then here's 29. So somewhere between these two lines is our latitude. And then we've got 89.9 west for our longitude. So that means it's going to be between 89 and 90. So remember, 90 is easy to find on a map right here. So 1 over is going to be 89. So there's our square. And one more time within our square, we'll plot a point that'll show us where the storm was at this point in time. So as we look at it, 29.1. Point 1 means it's almost on 29, just barely above 29. So if you can see, here's our 29 line. The red dot is just above it. And then when we've got 89.9, point 9 means it's almost on the higher number. So what's the higher number? 90. So it's almost on 90. So there you see where our latitude and our longitude, where they intersect, where they come together, and that's our final point. The last thing I'm going to show you on this map, boys and girls, is I went ahead and drew a line that shows the whole track of the storm. Now, also in your packets, hopefully you got something that looks like this. This is, and should be 3 or 4 pages, but it's a list of coordinates for the storm, for the whole life of the storm. If you take that whole list and start practicing and plotting it point by point, then you should end up with something that kind of looks like that if you draw a bunch of dots and then draw a line to connect all the dots. That was ultimately the track that Cristobal took. So hopefully I made a little more sense of latitude and longitude for you and how you can track a hurricane. But as I said, boys and girls, the best way to learn this is to practice. So get those tracking maps and practice on your own. Now, you got a tracking map or two in your packet that you can practice with. Here's a key point that I probably should have warned you about earlier. I think said get a pencil. If you use a pencil, then you can erase and start over or fix any mistakes you might have. But if you need to get more blank tracking maps, I've made some and I have them on our website. So kids that are old enough, you can do this, or if mom and dad can help you, if you've got access to a computer, go to wafb.com/hurricane, and on that page, right down in here, I've highlighted it, we've got a link to the hurricane tracking charts that you can print on your own, so you can print more copies, you can practice, you can track the other hurricanes that develop through the remainder of this hurricane season. So boys and girls, that was it. That's how you track hurricanes. Like I said, hopefully you were able to learn a little bit from that. Hopefully it makes some sense. And hopefully my assignment to you guys is to practice some more. I think it's kind of fun. It's kind of a fun way to learn about latitude and longitude, but also kind of learn about the weather and track hurricanes. So thanks again to the folks at Big Buddy for inviting me here to be a part of the BR Summer Experience. To everybody out there, hope you have a great rest of the summer, and hopefully we have a quiet hurricane season.